So estate planning and avoiding probate laws vary by state, and then there's local rules. And it's really important both to find somebody who is an expert in the area you're working in, both in terms of geography as well as an expert in the area of estate planning and probate rather than somebody who's a generalist. I'm really excited today to bring to a program somebody who I saw on a podcast. I thought this is the kind of guy that I want to share with my audience, Tanner Pittman, who's an attorney both in Georgia and Alabama, because he likes football and he has a base covered down the SEC. Tanner, thank you so much for coming on our show today.
Thank you, Bill.
So I noticed on your website that you are a specialist in estate planning and estate resolution. How did you end up in that particular niche that you specialize in?
Yeah, not by design. I started out of law school at a smaller firm where the partners did a lot of municipal government work. So we represented a number of government entities, and yet we had a practice with individual clients as well. And I found my way into doing a lot of probate work through that. And when I hung up my shingle about 3 years later, so when I started a firm about 3 years later, that's where I really had found myself by that point. And estate planning is kind of a natural complement to the probate world.
So I mean, when you say you're hanging on the shingle, I know so many attorneys feel desperate and take almost anything and want to cast a wide net of areas. And from where I sit, end up really being good at none of them versus having the discipline perhaps to narrow it. So how did you come to the decision to have that focus? Sure.
So now we're talking shop. And
the business side.
Yeah, I like talking about that. You do very well as a lawyer to try to specialize. I think had I just come out of law school and tried to start a practice, I might have cast a broad net. But unlike some professions, we have a lot of barriers to entry, and there's a lot of client work, and the fees are good when you can get them. So you're usually not going to starve. And you notice I'm not in Atlanta or Birmingham or the big markets in Georgia and Alabama. And even in my size markets, so where I practice in Georgia, there might be 100,000 folks in the counties where I generally am. Same thing in Alabama. Even in that size market, there is just plenty of work in a niche practice like mine. And then, if you just try to be the kind of attorney that answers phone calls, get things done on time, and generally does what he says he will do, you'll find that the work is there for you.
How it's supposed to work in a growing economy in a area of a community. So it's interesting. I live in Los Angeles where none of that's true. Our economy is not growing, and we don't have that sense of community that my father, who was an attorney, that he started when he was in a suburb in part of Los Angeles that now is part of the major city. Mm-hmm. So what is the most common, people, as a real estate agent, I'm often telling people, hey, I know you're buying the property in your name. Have you considered an estate plan? Have you considered a trust or some other way to protect yourself, protect your family? And I'm still shocked at how many people say, no, they haven't thought about it, or they don't think they need one as they're buying $1 million house. What's the most common question or problem that actually causes somebody to call the attorney? What is it that they finally get into action and they're making a phone call to spend some time with you?
Yeah, so that's easy. So that's usually if they've been through it, if they've dealt with the probate of a loved one's estate. It's very frequent that then they are themselves looking to oftentimes form a trust to avoid probate difficulties, and then I think to clarify things that perhaps maybe their parents or grandparents didn't make clear, and can create some friction after they pass away. You think of clients try to look at estate planning generally at 3 times, and one is when they have kids, and another is if they come into money, and then the third is if they're contemplating death. And what I just described kind of falls under that. They've recently seen a loved one pass.
Trying to close the barn doors after some of the cows got out. And some cows inside, I think.
Yep.
In
At my
California,
peril, I start using a lot of fun metaphors around probate stuff, but you quickly find you shouldn't do that because you're dealing with people's estates. Someone has passed away.
right? I can be insensitive talking to you about it, but yeah, when you talk to
Right.
people, it's their
That's
money,
right.
and more than that, it's not even just the money or the assets. It also can be symbols of emotion, right? Sometimes I know personally, my mother and her brothers fought for years over these. They call them lusters, which I think you would say maybe is some sort of a decorative piece at a dining
Yep.
room table. And I even know what a luster was my whole life. And as a kid, I heard this fight about the lusters, mom's lusters. It should have come to me, should have come to you. And I remember I finally, my mother and uncle resolved their issues, and uncle was delivering the lusters. I'm expecting something that's like magnificent, and just a couple decorative pieces that if you were in a garage sale, you wouldn't pay attention to. But the emotion of that was real for my mom, and whose mother passed when she was young, and her father remarried and all that. So how much of your practice is the technical skills of law and writing documents properly, reviewing documents, versus how much
Right.
of the soft skills of being sensitive to the emotions of your clients or your clients' potential errors?
So just that emotional side comes into play, and I would say more in probate litigation, which we do a great deal of, than in estate planning. And Bill, you said it. These little things. I was just telling a client this morning. I was in a case in 2016 in probate litigation in which there was a Marine rifle. So the father had died and had bequeathed his rifle to his son, and the executor of the estate couldn't find it, and my client still thinks that it was hidden from the son. And I heard from her in late 2023, so 7 years later, it was still an issue for her, and it wasn't one we were able to resolve because it was just proving the negative of it being gone, but
Right.
it was impossible for the executor.
Right.
There's so much emotion, and all the feelings of all the years of being with that person tend to coalesce around one material object. And if a rifle is bad, then of course the home place is exponentially worse.
Right.
And a lot of these estates, when we get to fussing over them, the lawyers are the ones that win, in terms of our fees.
Right. So when you get people contact you about estate plans, I find so many customers, because I get involved when there's a problem in the real estate, right? The people who go in the merry way, I don't hear from as often or take notice, but I regularly find people who met with an estate planning attorney, maybe began the process, maybe even create documents.
Right.
And they have this great binder that they never
Yep.
signed. And then in California, they didn't move the assets
That's it.
into the trust. How prevalent of an issue is that for you in your practice? And what, if anything, do you do to help your customers or clients mitigate that risk?
So common. Out of the gate, I would say we don't push clients into trusts as much as I would if I were a California or, interestingly, a Florida lawyer. Probate in Georgia, especially, it can be simple, and in Alabama, nearly so. But California is known as having a complex probate process, and yet we see the same thing. One of the dangers of having that pretty little binder with a living trust and the 50-page document is that you immediately create a false sense of security in your client that they've paid a little bit of money to have things set up.
Right.
But then the lawyer's got her fee or his fee, and they're done, and the client doesn't follow up, and neither does the attorney. So, the answer is an obvious one. We aren't we don't contractually oblige ourselves to follow up with our clients, but we do. And annually we have a mailer where we invite clients to consider what we told them when we signed documents, that this trust is only as good as the stuff you put in it.
Right.
And then
At that time.
that's right. And we include schedules for them to update their assets for their heirs. And I think that's one of the reasons we don't necessarily push people to a trust, even though there's more work and more fees for us. We don't want to create situations where we both took a big fee on the front end and then probate becomes difficult in the back end because they never funded the trust properly.
Right. Yeah, one of the things as a real estate agent, I try to train my team members is get involved with your customers, to get them into an estate plan, and then ask questions about what their plan is, and then be part of the follow process. We have access to public record deeds, and so if a client has property and the plans to put it in the trust, I recommend put a to-do list 3 days later, check public records. If it is recorded in the deed, send it to the customer, send to the attorney a copy of it. Nobody minds an extra copy proving something was done right. If it's not done, call out to the customer and the attorney and say, hey, I notice it doesn't appear to be recorded. Is there a problem? And not my place if you don't want to tell me, but I'm just here to help and follow up. And I think that's where we try to be an extra arm for the attorneys we work with to help them be more effective. Is it an issue? Like in California, oddly enough, we have a procedure where if you write an estate plan and you meant to put a property in the estate plan and you didn't, maybe you put it in, took it out, or you never actually deeded in the estate plan, and you can prove it was their intention, which is a argument at law, then we have a process that will, a petition that will put the asset in the estate plan, the trust,
into the
after
trust.
the fact, right? It's
Yeah.
called a Hegseth petition. Do you have something similar in Georgia and or Alabama, or is it not so critical? Because it seems to me there's probate might dictate the splitting of assets one way, an estate plan might be completely different, and so you have parties who want it done one way or the other. It's not a it doesn't matter situation in some cases.
So we have, in California and in Georgia and Alabama too, there's this notion of, I'm sure you've heard it, law. So a court can sit as a court of law or a court of equity. And equity is a hard term to define, but if a court is sitting in equity, what the judge there is doing is putting things back the way they should have been, but for some mistake or some wrong that's been done. He's doing or she's doing equity. And we, obviously we have courts of equity just like California does, but we don't have a specific petition. And it would be a really tough row to hoe to say, let's say my wife and I put 90%, we own several pieces of real estate, let us say, and we put 90% of all of them into a trust and just leave out one. And maybe we even have a draft of a document in a desk drawer that you can find, or whatever other proof you'd want to have. It wouldn't go anywhere in Alabama or Georgia. I don't believe. I think the assumption would be that the best proof of our intention is what we actually do on a document.
Yeah, in California, it's so common. We actually have a term based on the lawsuit that started the process. So we have a term for that petition, Hegseth, which was the court decision.
Is that right?
It's so common. Yeah, and it's interesting that it's a court of equity, and I appreciate explaining that, and I understand the concept, and I can see why a judge would, given the right evidence, it's not automatic. It was common to deed properties out of trust to refinance them. Nowadays, that's not required because the lenders got some training in how to do it. But there was a time period where trusts were increasing faster than the lender's ability. And so in the refinance craze, it was just easy to say, hey, I can't get to you unless you deed it out of the trust. Oh, no problem. We'll put it back in later. They forgot to put it back in later. Somebody passes, and now you have the old wife involved rather than the new wife, or the old kids or the new kids, and that became a whole issue. So a little different in California.
That's got to be the reason. I didn't know that, and now we have this. You probably know the words, since you clearly know this field really well. There's national legislation, this Garner-St. Germain Act, wherein, it does a lot, but the thrust of it is, as you're saying, if I've got a mortgage, or in Georgia we call them a deed to secure debt, and I put the property that is the security in trust, and I haven't done any damage to that mortgage relationship.
Right.
It rocks right on. Yeah, that's neat. I wasn't familiar with that part of Florida.
Yeah.
Law or lore.
Yeah. It's really some interesting.
California, excuse me.
Yeah. No, it is interesting, and how some of these little things. Of course, in California, we have a lot more litigation. We have a lot more people, for one.
Sure.
We have a lot more litigation, for two, and higher real estate prices also make it more common. So there's some factors that drive the differences, but the principles in some cases are similar. So, in your case as an attorney, I think, I coach a mastermind of realtors across the country. I have a team of agents across the country. I think it's a misperception that attorneys like you sit in your office on some throne and you hand out referrals for real estate involved in trust and probate, like Santa Claus hands out candy canes at Christmas time. But I think the reality is that more often business comes to good attorneys from real estate agents, and that in most cases come kind of with somebody attached, or the customer has somebody that they feel attached to for the real estate. So can you describe, in your case, and I'm not looking to create an avalanche of inquiries for you, but
Sure.
Generally speaking, to your knowledge, is your business, you work with real estate agents? Do real estate agents refer you clients at the time that people are buying property or coming into money? Or is it the other way around? Are you actually more reaching out to find realtors to work with for your clients?
Yeah. I really like the way you queued that up. One thing that's true is that lawyers are not supposed to do, I'm sure this is true in the California ethics rules too. We're not supposed to really do quid pro quos for referrals.
Right.
And a lot of attorneys get around that with a, understood relationship where if Bill Gross scratches my back, then I'll scratch his eventually.
Right.
It's just also not true, as you just said, that I've got these, kind of wide-eyed clients bumbling into my office who have significant wealth, but for all the world don't know how to get a referral to a real estate agent and need my wisdom to send them to the right folks. And so I see what you're saying. And if I were a Georgia real estate agent or an Alabama one, I'm not sure I'd spend a lot of time beefing up my, Rolodex of attorney referral sources. As you say, we're not, at least I'm not, passing out real estate deals to my insiders. And then in terms of where we get work from, I would just say, Bill, more in more of a general reputation sense. Right. So it's true that I work with real estate agents that would probably refer me and have, but it's no less true of whatever deacons at my church or what have you.
It seems to me also that depending on the size of your practice, the size of your market, I know different attorneys do different things to do their business generation, and the best way to get business is kind of be there. Meaning, if you enjoy going to networking events, business-oriented, chamber of commerce, that's a place you can meet and develop relationships. I do know that there are attorneys who do either live or now, post-COVID, more commonly online webinars, events for clients to educate them about that. And I say to agents, well, if you really want to do business with an attorney, make sure you promote their event to your population, and then you kind of come pre-connected and have a chance to show what you can do and earn maybe other business down the road. Do you do any kind of marketing for your? It sounds to me like your business is based on your success and general reputation. Have you ever done any kind of events or marketing events like that? And how would you feel about somebody calling you saying, hey, I also have customers who need your service. I'm not looking for a payment. I'm not looking for any commitment, but I'd like to invite them to your event. Can we somehow support what you're doing?
My job interview that led to my first job out of law school, that was my only other job out of law school before I went solo, was with a just truly gifted attorney who told me at that interview, our only marketing is the best marketing, and it's just do good work.
Mm,
And he was so right.
mm,
And unlike a real estate agent, I said there are barriers to entry of my profession. I'll maybe go a step further. We're really an organized cartel. I mean,
right.
and not in some sinister way, but
Well,
for example, if you were a lawyer and I called up your client and said, wouldn't you prefer to work with me? Your next call would be not to that client, but to the state bar, because I've committed an ethical violation. I can steal your clients.
right.
And I can't ask what you're charging them and all these other things. So if you do good work, it's not hard to get still more work. And I know a lawyer who does what you've just described. In part, he has a podcast. I can't never get that guy on the phone, and I don't refer anybody to him.
Right.
And I know still others. Now there is a fella in Atlanta I know who does very, very well with things of that nature, and he's been able to grow his firm with partners and associates just at a really good clip. And maybe since I'm not in Midtown Atlanta, don't quite have that agility to grow into a new volume of work. I know that was a long-winded answer, but
No, I think,
it's rare that I'm too energized about, as you say, a marketing event.
well, I think, and therefore, and everybody's different, right? You're different
Right.
than that attorney in Metro Atlanta. And I think that understanding how you are, if I was in your local market and wanted to earn your business, I would do really good work in real estate. I'd make sure my customers, I got the opportunity, I'd make sure I would at least reach out and give you status and give you information. And, you might disregard the emails, but at least you'd say, wow, this guy does good work, and just use the
That's
phrase
right.
that you
Yeah.
use. And at some point, if I'm the realtor who does the best work, you're probably going to pick me. And my guess is that's true of you with other professionals that you work with in your, outside of your business, right? I would imagine your
No
insurance
question.
agent
There's
is.
no question about it. If I know Bill Gross just generally returns phone calls just as soon as he can,
Right.
it is conscientious. It's amazing how much that separates one professional from the pack.
I have a case right now where it's a probate where we're using a unlawful detainer attorney. In LA, we have whole specialists in that field. There's a whole world of unlawful detainer and eviction. That an attorney, even though he knows the law and probably could do some of the work, it's just too, it's a war. And so my attorney on the probate is emailing the contact at the UD firm, copying me, asking status. And I actually replied to him privately, oh, by the way, our case manager is so-and-so, and here's the status. Like, I was already a step ahead of him on and following up for him on what was going on. And I didn't say those words, but I'm letting him know I have this. Like, I'm your paralegal in essence, doing your follow-up for you at no cost to you, because I want to get paid. I'm not doing it because I'm no other reason. So I think I like that phrase, do good work. And I also remember when I was married, the rabbi married us, and I've never seen him again. And I'm not saying he'll live up to this, but he gave us some advice at when we gave our vows, that to this day, it's such good business advice. He said, the key to success in marriage, and I think it's true with any relationship, the key to success in marriage is not finding the right partner, it's being the right partner.
Yeah.
And I tell real estate agents, the best way to find a great attorney is be a great realtor. And then the great attorney is going to say, hey, you're better than the average bear. You do good work, to use your phrase. I like that one a lot. So if it sounds to me, I think I can answer this for you now. So, but I like to kind of wrap up these calls with, if you were, if you had a niece, nephew, starting their career, younger brother, sister, starting their career in real estate, they really were interested in estate planning related issues in real estate, or probate related real estate issues, or wanted to help those families, what would you recommend them to do? I guess, to use your phrase, to do good work. Obviously, within real estate, there's best practices. Is there anything in the field of probate estate plan that you'd recommend them to learn about or to familiarize themselves with, so when they get in this field, they can be more effective?
Okay, I'm going to backtrack a little bit on what I said before. So I went on for a minute and a half about how I don't whatever, pass out real estate referrals. I still think if you were a realtor, a real estate agent in a given market, you would do really well to have a coffee with, just press flesh with all of the closing attorneys, maybe talk to their paralegals. And then, when it comes to meetings like that, most of us have the mind of pick your rodent metaphor of a hamster for remembering that meeting that I had with Bill Gross 6 months ago. So
Right.
in some way, just let me keep on hearing from you.
Right.
And as long as you're kind of like the most recent email on my list, as things come up, and they inevitably do, I'll think of Bill Gross, and then multiply that by the 24 attorneys you've met with that year. And before you can even look up, you've got a little flow of whatever should be referred.
Right.
Yeah, I will double back a little bit. I do think that there'd be a lot to be said for that, and we all get it. I mean, we understand y'all have got to network, and you're not being pushy.
Right.
And
Well, I think it's the key is to not be pushy, particularly with attorneys.
sure,
Right? That's the
Yeah.
key, because if there's any group that hates being pushed or solicited, it's attorneys, in my experience.
yeah,
But they also appreciate, I think, education, and appreciate consistency and good, and to use your word, good work. They look for that.
I think just that. If I know I've said it twice, but if I knew that Bill Gross, listen, he just is the real estate agent who you send him a text and you're going to get one back in 3 minutes. You call with a concern. It doesn't matter if he did your closing a month ago and he's not going to see another dime. He's going to give you a few minutes to address it.
Yeah.
If I just knew that he's the conscientious one, I couldn't stop myself from referring folks to. I know that guy in my market, and I've told him that's the reason. And
it's not magic. It's really it's the simple things, I
That's
think, in
right.
relationships. Well, and that's why I do these videos. It gives me a chance to share with attorneys, both that I know and meet new ones, about the information and the conscientious consistency of it.
That's it.
And same with you. Hopefully, this is something that will help introduce you to more people in your markets in Georgia, Alabama. I really appreciate our time today. For those who are interested in who want a little more Tanner Pittman in their life, whether it be estate planning or estate problems or litigation, the best place would be his website, tannerpittmanlaw.com. We'll put that in the description down below, tannerpittman.com. And if you go there, you'll find out a little bit about who he is and his practice areas. But again, I think the thing that I always look for before I even do these interviews is, are they specialists in this field, or are they just throwing out a wide net? And in this case, he definitely has a focus in estate planning, and he calls it estate resolution. So I would say avoiding problems, and then when you have problems, I think it's a simple way that I think of it as a real estate agent. And as a realtor, we always come across customers who either have a problem or we want our customers to avoid them in the future. And at the time that we sell houses, that's the best time to get them to do that. Tanner Pittman, attorney in Georgia and Alabama, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Bill, it was a lot of fun. Thank you. I enjoyed it.